On today's episode, we're going to dive fin too deep with myself and Neal Drsicoll, and we are going to discuss a lot, including the Miami Dolphins signing Alexander Mattison and K.J. Britt. We will also discuss the cornerback situation, the defensive tackle situation, and a lot of moves around the league as day 2 of free agency and day 4 of the whole spiel, if you include legal tampering, is concluding. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you are new. And as always, you know what time it is. Let's get into this one.
Touchdown! Got it! You have got to be kidding me. Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score! Field down the near side, man open, touchdown! The run from Tua Tagovailoa. Touchdown! He's going deep. He's got it for a touchdown again! Touchdown!
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go!
You're listening to Fin Too Deep.
Tua back to throw. Blitz coming. They get to him. No, he takes off running. And he's in. Touchdown, Miami.
With the 6th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Jalen Waddle.
Giving you unfiltered, informed, and controversial takes on the Miami Dolphins and the NFL Draft. Here's Reason and Neal.
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason. And we are back here for another one. Appreciate each and every one of you for coming through as we dive Fin too deep, as we are getting through the first week of free agency. And it's been an interesting one. I'm joined today by Neal Drsicoll. Neal, thank you for joining me as always. And hey, man, we got a lot to talk about. But before we do talk about everything that happened today, I want to hear your thoughts on everything that's happened up to this point. And I'll just give you a little quick fill-in where I stand. Hated the Zach Wilson deal. Player aside, I hated the money. I think you made him one of the highest paid backup quarterbacks in the NFL, and he hasn't proved he deserves to be one of the highest paid backup quarterbacks in the NFL. James Daniels, knocked out of the park. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, knocked out of the park. I like the safety moves to the point where they set themselves up where they don't have to be hampered or tied to a safety at 13. But I still think, obviously, with Patrick Morris, Elijah Campbell, and who they've added being all that, they could still use upgrades. Linebacker could use some more help. We need to find a running mate for Zach Seiler. We still need a left guard. Where are you at with how free agency has gone? And I'm really interested to hear what you think about the Zach Wilson deal.
Yeah, so, first of all, the whole free agency in general kind of lost its luster a little bit because the Sunday before was when Myles Garrett got extended, DK Metcalf got traded. It kind of spoiled a lot of the big name moves that were happening. I think the Dolphins have had an interesting start to free agency. There's been some good moves. There's been some head scratchers. One thing I definitely noticed is the abundance of one-year deals. So it seems like they're definitely not committing to players long-term right now. They're focused on building a roster for 2025 exclusively right now, it seems like. And they'll worry about the future after the future, because I do think that some level of results are going to be needed for a lot of players and coaches and office members to make sure that they're back, right? But, let's start with what I'll rank them in order of the moves. Like, I thought the James Daniels move was awesome. This is a guy, I think, for 3 years now, we've been clamoring to get on this line on the Dolphins, and he played center at Iowa, and he was a really good prospect coming out. I think he's developed into one of the best run blocking interior offensive linemen in the league, and where he might give you a little bit. Whatever he does is better than Liam Eichenberg, right? So that just goes without saying. But where he might not be the greatest, I think he's a mid-tier pass blocker. The Dolphins need some road graders in the running game, right? Like, that's what we've needed forever.
Yeah.
A guy that plays with that. So that deal was amazing. I think he's going to be every bit the type of move that Aaron Brewer was, maybe a little bit better last year, and that's a compliment. So love that move. My second favorite move was definitely Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. I don't even know how you say that, but it was what Nick Westbrook originally when he came out of Indiana, a guy that scored 9 touchdowns. And one of the things I've been banging the drum for a long time is that despite the amount of weapons that this team has, the best red zone weapon we've had has been Jonnu Smith, right? Like, this guy is a red zone threat. He brings some size to the squad. He had over 500 yards, 9 touchdowns last year. I think this is actually a huge upgrade to the number 3 wide receiver position, and this could be sneaky one of the best low-key signings of the offseason. I do think that. Like, he is a guy that if he can catch, over 500 yards, 6 to 8 touchdowns here, I mean, that's money well spent. They got a great deal to bring back Terrell Dodson. You and I were kind of chopping it up before. I think we're both in agreement that he's a LB2 who's could be an LB3. But he was a guy that what I liked about him is in half the season, he did get 3 interceptions. And one of the things I don't think our defense does enough is get turnover. So having him back at a fraction of some of these linebacker contracts that we saw, I thought was a good move. Larry Borum, I think that guy might not make the roster. I think it's just a camp body probably. I do think there's some talent they added to the safety room. Injuries do concern me a little bit, but they do have 2 guys that can be at least placeholders for a season. And, who knows what they do in the draft. But they'll have an opportunity if they want to go get the best safety in the draft if the opportunity presents itself, which I think it will at 13, right? So,
yeah.
Zach Wilson, I put a tweet out, like, kind of half joking, and dude, you should have seen the replies. I was like, oh, maybe like get lock him. No, I was kidding. Zach Wilson's horrible. Like, I wouldn't pay Zach Wilson $6 to be our backup quarterback, let alone $6 million. Like, I don't think the guy has the mental makeup. I don't like when, if you remember, like, they had to like beg him to come back and start the one game because you remember he kind of like
because the Rodgers stuff. Yeah.
Like, to me, it's like I don't know. I don't think he has the temperament to be successful in the league. He does have. Look, he has more talent probably than a lot of the backups that we've seen come here, probably all the way since Ryan Fitzpatrick, right, who was a starter for us at a time. But with that said, if we have Zach Wilson on the field, it's going to be a long season. We're going to be closer to that number 1 overall pick than we are a playoff spot. So I know that Mike McDaniel likes tools and he likes to see what he can do with them. But, I don't know, man. I think that was to spend 6 – I tweeted – they said they have to dress the offensive line, and they spent backup quarterback $6 million more than they spent combined on their offensive guards last year. Like, to me, it's just like, and him coming from the Jets and being the disaster that he was, it's kind of just like, I don't know, a slap into the face for us Dolphin fans that, like, are trying to win it. But it is what it is. He's going to be here. I know that some of the reports, and there's a Denver personality that I don't get along with, but I do know that he had said that at the end of the season there was a lot of buzz about Zach Wilson in the Denver locker room. I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not falling for it. So
yeah, well, that's my thing, because I heard that from multiple people, and my thing is, okay, like, let's break that down for a second. Jared Stidham made $7 million a year. He was actually, because Jacoby Brissett and Minshew were actually brought over as bridge quarterbacks. They weren't signed as backups. They made $8 million a year, right? One for Drake May and Gardner Minshew to take over for Aiden O'Connell. So you can't really count them as backups. But the highest paid veteran quarterback with backup intent last year was Jared Stidham, $7 million a year in Denver. they re-upped Jarrett Stidham for 2 years, $12 million. They let Zach Wilson walk. And Zach Wilson has more physical tools than Jarrett Stidham. What does that tell you? That right there, they chose Jarrett Stidham over Zach Wilson.
Right.
Exactly, bro.
Right.
So, and the thing is, I know the guys from the Shanahan tree, like Shanahan finally got his hands on Mac Jones because Mac Jones signed in San Francisco. The Shanahan tree loved Zach Wilson coming out. It's kind of similar to McDaniel. Who did McDaniel love and really turn a lot of people in the 49ers room into believers of that they selected over Mac Jones? Trey Lance. So you see the similarities. Like, here's my thing with Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson needs to be torn down, and rebuilt. Like, he is like, what was his big glaring issue? And this is why Sean Payton let him walk. What was his big glaring issue in BYU? Terrible in structure, god awful in structure, right? Out of structure, he could kill you, but in structure, that's where you got him. And has it really changed since he's been a Jet? Or he didn't get good coaching in New York. He got 1 year of coaching with Sean Payton. Like, the thing is, the guy's like 4 or 5 years into his career. He's 4 years in his career now. So there's a lot of bad habits and a lot of bad coaching instilled that you got to coach out of him. He's a reclamation project. And my issue with this is you gave $6 million guaranteed to a reclamation project. Jimmy G has to hit incentives to make more money guaranteed than him, okay? You made him at the time. He was tied with Jarrett Stidham for $6 million a year. They were the top, all right? Now he's been beat. Someone got paid yesterday that's making a little bit more. I forget who. But, like, I just – that's your contingency plan is a reclamation project? Like,
dude, I would have rather had Joe Flacco. I'm not kidding.
I'm not kidding. I agree with you. You know what I would have rather done? I would have rather see what happened with Kirk Cousins. I would have
100%. 100%.
I'm not even joking with you, bro. I didn't want Gardner Minshew. I'd take Gardner Minshew over that shit.
Yeah, I don't know how he got $6 million. I guess that's what's staggering to me the most of this. Like,
well, I'm not a Joshua Dobbs fan, Neal, but Joshua Dobbs has proven to be a viable backup that can come in and win games for you. He got $4 million a year.
Yeah, I think if you could have given him like $2 million with incentives, the fact that he could get up to like 8 or 10 with incentives to me is kind of insane because
it's nuts.
It's nuts. The money, it wasn't just the bad player; it was a bad deal too. I think.
Yeah. And Mariota was the guy I was thinking about. He got $8 million for the Commanders because he played good when he came in for them last year, right? Like, he played good. Like, another one I'll tell you too, bro. Like, I know he looked really good in the preseason against us, Neal. I would have rather thrown. Call me crazy. I would have rather thrown the $2.78 million at a guy like Kyle Trask than Zach Wilson.
Or you know what else I might have done? I might have seen how serious the Texans were about taking a quarterback number 1 and try to get Will Levis on the cheap.
The Titans, yeah.
See if they're bluffing about the quarterback or not. You know what I mean? Like, I would test it. Because, you know, if you can throw,
and then if you know they're, and then they could tell you, Neal, yeah, we're interested, but that's not a move we want to make till draft night. So sit tight because we're interested in him, but we don't want to show our hand on Cam, you know, till closer to the draft.
Right.
So then, you know, okay, Will Levis is out there. Okay, I can go see what's out there on the market, but I know I don't got to pay that kind of money. Like, it feels like they overpaid to get Zach Wilson in Miami.
Yeah, that's bad. That honestly, it seems like a Mike McDaniel move is what it seems like.
That's what it does to me too. Yeah,
like it seems like he's like, that guy's got talent.
Yeah,
let me get a chance to mold.
Yeah,
I have never had a young guy that I get to mold like. And, you know, so they get
it's Trey Lance, right? He pushed everyone to pick Trey Lance in that building. Shanahan wanted Mac Jones. He swayed everyone to Trey Lance. Look at the similarities in their game.
Well, and I think I think this definitely takes any quarterback in day 1 or day 2 of the draft out of the equation. That financial
Does it though? Because, bro, like let me ask you this: Zach Wilson, it's a 1-year deal. A, B, he's gonna stop you from drafting. If like McCord, you got 2 4th-round picks. McCord falls in your lap in the 4th-round pick. He stops you from taking McCord because guess what? I think McCord could beat him out in camp.
Not me, but the fact that they paid him that, and probably it was a Mike McDaniel move, makes me think that I could see them like.
And you're running the
high-fiving
organization
behind
wrong, and you need to be fired, bro. You should never let money and lesser talent stop you from drafting someone who's a better talent at a position of need. That is dumb. I'm talking about you, because you're right. Because you're right. I agree with you to an extent. Like, that's lunacy. Like, that is lunacy, bro. And that's why your asses are going to be on the street.
Yeah, and it's a type of move that, like, if Tua goes down and he goes in, you might as well just sing goodbye. You know, we should all go to the stadium.
God, bro. Like, let's go. You know,
goodbye, right?
Like, bro, like Neal, I think Tyler Show could beat him out, and I honestly believe that.
Yeah, and that was a guy that I thought, and a lot of people say his age is a deterrent. I actually think that might be attractive for the Dolphins because there's experience there, and it's different than getting just a cold rookie quarterback that doesn't get it. But yeah, we'll see, man. I still would pull one on the 4th round, and I'd still take lottery tickets. And hell, if I were on the team, I'd still take Milroe at 48 if he was there. So it is what it is. But
how high you think yours goes,
dude? So who did the Colts get? They got Daniel Jones.
Because there's a lot of buzz coming out of the combine about him, bro.
Yeah, I think he could sneak up at the end of the 2nd round, early 3rd round, actually. Because it's just the supply and demand of quarterbacks, man. Like, he'll get drafted. Like, and it's gonna be interesting. Like the Steelers, like, God, man, they don't have a plan at quarterback. And if they really go the Aaron Rodgers route, man, like, what a waste of their team right now. I kind of hope they do. I'll be honest. But today the Dolphins get Alexander Mattison. Maybe it's a slight upgrade to Jeff Wilson.
Well, we'll talk about the moves right now. So we'll start off with the first move that they did today. The first move that they made was actually earlier in the day. And the Dolphins, they went out and they got KJ Britt. And it kind of worked this way. Anthony Walker went to the Bucks. KJ Britt came to the Miami Dolphins. Now, KJ Britt, here's a player who kind of they really did swap because Anthony Walker isn't good in coverage, and KJ Britt, his strong suit is in run support. This
feels like a downgrade.
It does. It feels like this locks in Dotson as LB2, and they're not taking a linebacker high.
Agreed. And Britt's a good run defender. He's definitely tougher than Walker, and he's healthier than him. But I do think Anthony Walker did at least have a few stretches of games where he played pretty well. Honestly, this probably says – Channing Tindall's tenure as a Dolphin's going to come to an end. I still think they could go linebacker maybe in the middle rounds and see if they can get a guy. Because, no matter what they do, we know they were chasing Dre Greenlaw and that Terrell Dotson was their backup plan. Mm-hmm. We know that. So your cards are on the table that you like Terrell Dotson, you don't love him. And the contract offer that you're offering him is – less than half of what you're willing to pay for a guy like Dre Greenlaw, right? So that tells me that they viewed linebacker as a position they wanted to upgrade and didn't. So, and that's no shade on Terrell Dotson. That's life, man. There's someone who's always better than you, right? Like that's just the way it goes. But their cards were shown. So this isn't, yes, we got the guy we wanted all along back. This is, we took a shot at a linebacker. It didn't pan out, so we got the guy we liked. You know what I mean? But, it's a good tandem with him and Jordan Brooks. They played well together last year. There's no doubt about it. For me, it's just one of those things that it's adequate, and you had a chance to make it dynamic. I thought Dre Greenlaw and Jordan Brooks would have been a very dynamic tandem with two really good players that do two different skill sets to the table, man. And I wanted to see that. And in terms of the whole dog mentality, Dre Greenlaw is probably up there with almost anybody in the damn league.
Buddy, he's a tone setter, man. He's a leader. And, is there a better linebacker and run support in the NFL than Dre Greenlaw when he's healthy right now?
Think about this. The Dolphins, they could have had, instead of having Zach Wilson and Terrell Dotson, they could have had Dre Greenlaw.
I would take that in a heartbeat, man. And then give me Kyle Trask for $2.78 million, and we're cooking. With KJ Britt, obviously he's coming off his best year as a pro, and that's probably because, he saw the most snaps of his career. He saw 632, the most snaps he'd ever had in his career. Before that, only a 4-year career, was 252 in 2023. And he saw his best year, right? 72 combined tackles, 40 solo, 32 assists. Had his first half sack of his career. He offers you 0, really, in the pass rush. Like me and Neal have mentioned, this is a run support guy. He's also not very good in coverage. I know I kind of alluded to this last year. He saw his most coverage snaps. He saw 337 coverage snaps. He was targeted 34 times, allowed 26 receptions for 277 yards and a touchdown. He had 1 pass breakup, but he allowed 109.6 NFL passer rating when he was targeted.
Yikes.
He allowed 10.7 yards per reception. Check this one, Neal. Out of the 277 yards he allowed in coverage, 165 of those were after the catch.
Yikes.
Yeah, that's not good. Now, again, he's a great run defender,
that does
right?
not sound like Ray Lewis.
Yeah, no. But again, he's a great run defender, right? Like, that's his bread and butter. He's our replacement for their idea of what Walker was supposed to be last year. Like, that tweet, I know it's facetious, but it literally is down to the skill set. They literally the Bucs and the Dolphins swapped.
Well, that was the first switcheroo they did of the day.
Yeah. the old switcheroo. As Neal just alluded to.
And I think they lost both switcheroos, if I'm being honest today.
Yo, you might have a case, bro. Oh, my God. Greer's out here, bro. He ain't cooking with fish grease. He's not even cooking with oil. This guy's, I don't know what he's cooking with, bro. Piss and vinegar. All right. Man. So, kind of going off of what Neal had just said to you guys, the Miami Dolphins, they went out and they signed Alexander Mattison. Now, what Neal was alluding to with the switcheroo is Raheem Mostert went to the Raiders today. Neal, I'm not a fan of Mattison. What did he have? A couple good backup years where he had to step in for Dalvin Cook, and then he got a second contract from Minnesota. I'm just not a huge fan of him. I never have been. I'm going to be honest with you. I'll let you say the guy you named, but I'll go back to my list and my top 30 free agents, Neal. You want to solve the short yardage situation? I would have thrown $2 or $3 million at Nick Chubb or $1 or $2 million at A.J. Dillon and said, all right, you guys can be my short yardage back, but I'll pay you, Nick, a little bit more because you're way more dynamic if you stay healthy. You've got a name you wish they threw some money at. So what are your thoughts on this Mattison deal?
I think he's probably a slight upgrade to Jeff Wilson. But look, Minnesota tried to give him a chance to be the guy, and he couldn't take it. He couldn't take it by the reins. He just couldn't do it. So, look, he's a guy. There's worse number 3 running backs to have, but he's a tough runner. He scores touchdowns. I like those type of things, but I will say, it's another one of those moves where it's like, okay, like that's the best you could do because I the guy who I wanted was J.K. Dobbins, and I thought they could have got him probably for similar money or with maybe some incentives baked into it. But it is what it is. Like they're operating on finding value signings on 1-year deal. He fits that mold. I'm not jumping for joy. I'm not down in the dumps about it. It's just one of those moves where, there's no real reaction to it. I don't expect him to do much. I still think the Dolphins could be players on day 3 of the draft for a running back in a deep class if the right player falls to him. Like I could see them really liking a guy like Taj Brooks from Texas Tech as a guy that really fits what they're looking for. But yeah, today was just a lackluster day. And one thing I'll also caution is just because these guys get signed don't mean they make the roster. A lot of these guys that have these 1-year deals, if they don't show much in camp and there's a player that you get who's a 7th round pick and you could save $800,000 by going with the younger player, I could see them easily releasing some of these guys that were signed today.
Well, the other thing I'll say too is, you know, what I will add to that for sure is the thing too is look at every move aside from James Daniels. Neal, has any move stopped you from drafting the right player at any position you signed a player for? Like, well, any of these players, other than James Daniels, none of these players will stop you from drafting a player if the right guy falls in your lap at those respective positions.
Yeah, I could make a case for sure for an offensive guard, an offensive tackle who could play inside a guard and move out, defensive tackle, linebacker, corner, safety. Like, yeah, nothing they have done so far in free agency changes anything I believe about the draft. Even technically, if you look at James Daniels' contract, it's really a 1-year deal. Like, that's the way I look at it. Like, they have an easy out if he doesn't play well, and if he does play well, I doubt very much he's going to be happy making $8 million because he's probably a player that should command double that if he gets to play and he's healthy. So, I mean, yeah, man, I think you're 100% spot on. And I like that a little bit, I got to be honest, because I really think the Dolphins will be in position to take whoever the best player on their board is at 13. And, you know, if that player is a corner and we already signed a corner, you know, it doesn't have the same, I guess, attraction maybe to the fan base of, you know, that type of move because you view it as already filled. So I think a lot of the moves they did is try to build a lot of competition on this roster at a lot of positions. But if they view a safety at 13, they'll take one. They're not going to be afraid because of the deals they made. And look, they still have a big wide open hole at left guard.
Yeah. All right. Shout out to Philip Marrow. He became a YouTube member. Timothy Washington, member for 11 months. Reason and Neal, would y'all sign Ben Cleveland? Go ahead.
Hell no, because he's in trouble. Here he's got his DWI. He got in trouble, and now he's getting divorced from his wife. He's got a lot of things going on that I just don't want another distraction added on. On tape, he's actually a guy, especially a couple years against us. He played an elite game against us. I think the game when they beat us like 59 to whatever in Baltimore. But I don't need another guy to come in here with a lot of distractions. I like the interior depth in the draft this year. I still like a lot of the free agents that are available out there as well. I just think there's better options than Ben Cleveland.
Yeah, I think when you talk about the free agents, the issue is like so many of them are right guards, like Barron Sheriff, Tevin Jenkins, who's still out there, which is crazy to me.
I'm surprised Tevin Jenkins is out there, man.
Yeah, because he offers you flexibility at tackle and guard, and his asking really price must be huge, right?
Yeah, him and Mekhi Becton are two guys that I really like.
Yeah, and I mean, I know you like Shaq Mason, but he's another right guard. Yeah, you know, Greg Van Roten, he's old. Will Hernandez, another right guard. You know, I honestly, you know, I would. Man, you know, were you shocked that for how old Kevin Zeitler is, he got $9 million a year?
I was flabbergasted by how much he got in that contract. Like, he's a great player, don't get me wrong, but isn't he going to be 35 or 36 when the season starts?
Yeah, he's going to be 35, I think.
Yeah, that's a lot, but you know, with that said, there's a guy who's older than 35 that I'd love to come back from our team. So
yeah, exactly.
You know, I guess age is just a number when you still can play at a high level.
That's true. But yeah, I think Mekhi Becton is like the top left guard on the market right now. I would be, you know, I've said this before, I'd be totally down. And then you wouldn't have 100%. To be stressing about getting a guard in the draft. Because right now, I mean, like, listen, this question right here, based on what we have already signed, what is y'all perfect positions we draft at 13 and 48? Love y'all's weekly show. Y'all should do a draft show. Oh, we do. Every week is a draft show here, but trust me, once April's about to roll around here, we'll do our mock drafts. We'll be way heavier into the draft season. But I mean, I'll go first. For me, I mean, I kind of tweeted about this. For me, it just feels like where they're at right now and how it's gone. Kenneth Grant or Will Johnson seem like the perfect fit 13 right now. Some other things obviously make sense at 13, I would say. And that would probably be, I mean, I know I talked about maybe Jahad Campbell or Jalen Walker. I said that was a little too rich for Jahad Campbell because at least Jalen Walker offers you that edge flexibility. But given how they feel that linebacker, I think they would take Malachi Starks or Amanda Worry. And then you look at that, man, if Will Campbell falls at 13, how perfect is that? But I really think Kenneth Grant or Will Johnson are the guy if the board falls their way, with obviously safety and then offensive line, depending on who's on the board. Because I think Banks makes sense now too, Neal, that it's the left side you need to fill. So Armand Membo will be off the board. But I know if Campbell or Banks, especially Campbell, if Campbell's on the board with third, like if Campbell, Grant, and Johnson are on the board, along with both the safeties, they got a real decision to make right there. So I think that makes the most sense. And then I think whatever they don't fill there in that need at 13, they come back on. Like if they go Kenneth Grant, I wouldn't be shocked if they, what if Benjamin Morrison is still hanging around in the second, right? Or, what if Siobhan Revel's hanging around in the second? I could see them really liking a guy like that. You know what I mean? Or if they go Will Johnson, now does Walter Nolan sit there and intrigue them? Does Deion Walker intrigue them at 48? Is I think Derek Harmon will be gone by then. But do one of the defensive tackles, tease you or intrigue you at 48? Or is that where you're going to go guard? Is that where you're going to get a Tate Ratledge? Is that where you're going to get and figure out the left guard there at 48? So remember, they took Robert Hunt at the top of the second round. So, I really think the first three picks, defensive tackle, corner, and guard with safety and linebacker creeping around make the most sense. Where are you at, Neal?
Yeah, I think what the pick that would make me the happiest would be Kenneth Grant from Michigan, who's my number one rated defensive tackle. I finalized my positional rank. It's working on my board. I think Kenneth Grant's going to end up being my 5th overall player in the draft on my big board. I think he's a game-changing defensive tackle for us, so I would love to get him. Where I think they're more likely to head is, and I'm going to take the easy route out here, is I think defensive back is secondary is a disaster right now. I do think that. So Will Johnson, if he is there, I think the Dolphins run to the podium. I don't think they'd hesitate to take him. And if there's safeties and corners on the board, they value corners more than safeties. Everything they've done since Chris Greer has been there has shown that, right?
Unless you're like a generational like Minka or some potential generational
right.
like Minka or something, yeah.
Right. But with that said, I will say that two players that have helped themselves out the last couple weeks more than just about anybody have been Nick Ebenwari and Malachi Starks. I mean, they are such different type of players, but both would fill major needs for us. So I have a feeling that they have an affinity for Malachi Starks. I've said this on the show, that someone who works for the Georgia Bulldogs told me that no team spent more time in Athens than the Miami Dolphins. Mm-hmm. And I think that's because of Malachi Starks. And I do think that's because of Jalen Walker. But I will say this. One name I will throw out there that might stagger a lot of people if he's the pick at 13. But we know that they're not satisfied with their pass rushers, right? We know that.
Mykel Williams, they love him.
Mykel Williams, I have a feeling if he is there, has a strong chance to be the Dolphins' pick. I really do. They wanted Bosa. Chubb's probably on his last year. Phillips might be on his last year.
That's why I think Jalen Walker's got a real chance too, because he can be that strong side linebacker for you. He offers you flexibility on the second level, but then he offers you flexibility on pass rush downs as an edge rusher. Like, and you look at that linebacker crew, they could use another guy. Like, and Jalen Walker gives you multi-level versatility. He's another one that is, I've told people when I saw Mike McDaniel tweeting with him, that's why I tweeted out, do not sleep on Jalen Walker. Greer loves his edge guys, and that's a premium position for him. And Jalen Walker also offers you second level versatility That's killing two birds with one stone, and half of that is a premium. That sounds like a Greer would just gush over him.
Right. So I'd say 60% chance is going to be a Georgia Bulldog, 40% chance is going to be a Michigan Wolverine. That's kind of how I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And at 48, I'll say, like, if they go defensive back, like I think is what could really happen here, I want to go get who I think could be the best left guard on the team. And there's two guys that stand out for me, and it's Donovan Jackson from Ohio State and Jonah Savaiinaea from Arizona. I would get one of those two big monsters and plug them in at left guard and then go rounds 3, 4, and 5 and take a defensive lineman in each one of them, right? Like I really would. Because if you walk away with Will Johnson, Jonah Savaiinaea, Jamari Caldwell, CJ West, and Jordan Phillips, like that's a hell of a draft. You know what I mean? Like that's a hell of a draft right there. Not to count any other picks that you have. So, yeah, man, those two picks are the big ones. And I will say one thing I've been cautioning is I've seen a lot of people doing like jumping jacks and cartwheels because we have 11 draft picks. I think that you can count on instant impact from two of them and a good role player from one of them. If you get more than that, you get lucky. Like I'd be like, first round, you want a guy that can get on the field immediately. Second round, you'd love to get a starter or a key contributor, right? Round 3, that's where you start to get guys that are fringe starters, fringe contributors, but are more than likely kind of a depth guy. And then, 4th, 5th round is where you're really getting players that are like Mo Kamara was for us last year. Like, they and then, round 6, 7, they're kind of like lottery tickets, right? So it's like,
they're UDFAs, they're glorified UDFAs.
Yeah, so it's like I just because we have 11 picks, what I think might happen, I think the Dolphins are going to find a way to get back on the board in day 2 before pick 98.
Well, I hope they do because that is too big of a gap from 48 to 98.
Right. Like think about this: if you are a team drafting at the top of let's say the Kansas City Chiefs have the Titans pick, right? They traded for that. So if the Chiefs are on the board and the Dolphins call and say, you know what? We know we're going to probably get a comp pick next year for Javon Holland. We'll send next year's second for your third this year. And that third pick is either the second or third pick in this year's draft, or I think it's second. Like, they would do that in a heartbeat because in many people's eyes, that could be pick 48 next year. You know what I mean? So it makes sense. Like, I think the Dolphins are in position to have to do something like that because they are entering this draft with a good amount of needs. Their needs really align well with this draft class. Like next year, who knows if there's going to be this abundance of defensive tackle and interior offensive linemen. Like if they can walk out with a starting guy in their secondary, a starting guy on their defensive line, and a starting left guard, like that's a big time win. That's a big time win for me. So that's where it's like, I think they got to get a little aggressive.
Listen, I lead that Jonah Savaiinaea hype train, man. I would love him. I'm going to make a bold take. I think Tyler Booker, Gray Zabel, Donovan Jackson, and Jonah Savaiinaea are off the board before we pick.
It wouldn't surprise me. And there's a name that we didn't even talk about. And
Marcus Membo might be your best guy, or Tate. Who?
I love Tyler Booker, man. I just love him.
He's awesome, but I think it's too high. Like I think if they trade back, like I think if you get him from 18 beyond, that makes sense. I think it's kind of like Jahad Campbell, right? Like I love Jahad Campbell, but to me, true Mikes, unless you're Roquan Smith, the last true Mike to go in the top 15, Mikes usually go in the 20s, right? It's kind of like where I'm at with, unless you're generational. Interior linebackers, tight ends, and guards usually don't start until 20, right? Like, unless you're, like, generational potentially.
Yeah, and look, I love Tyler Booker. I think he's great. I don't think he's generational.
No.
I think he is a guy that could be an all-pro left guard, though, in this league.
I do agree. Yeah.
But it's going to be too rich. It's for the Dolphins, so it doesn't matter what I think. I know they won't take a pure guard at 13.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be a bad pick, and maybe a lot of people think it would. But like, I remember this fan base pounding the table for Jackson Powers Johnson. Tyler Booker is like 5 times better than that guy.
Yeah.
You know, so but Jonas Savaiinaea is a stud, dude. I've
I
liked
love
him for
him.
a long time.
I think you could make the transition from the right side to the left too, and he offers you tackle guard flexibility. I'm all over him.
100%. And so does Donovan Jackson. That's why I mentioned him because he in the college football playoffs he played left tackle for Ohio State because Josh Simmons was down, and he played better
He
than
was
anybody
good.
else
Yeah,
in
he was
college
good.
football.
That was
left
some of his
tackle
best
during that
tape.
period.
Yeah.
But I think he's a really, really good left guard, man. So like, here's the summarize. There's going to be great options at 13 and 48, and it's really crucial that the Dolphins hit on both picks. You can't have a Cam Smith scenario this year. It's not affordable for where they are. Like that Cam Smith pick now, in retrospect, because we lost that one first rounder because of the boat thing, like that Cam Smith missing in round 2 has been a colossal failure because of now, they tried to transition away from Xavier Howard to Kendall Fuller. That didn't work. They transitioned away to Kendall Fuller. Now they don't. Now the cupboard's bared out there, man. And that was a big miss because if Cam Smith was a young starter on that opposite side of Jalen Ramsey right now, we'd be feeling a lot better about this football team.
Yeah, 110%. Let me put this up here. So, D-Hugga all day. Is there any likelihood that Tyreek gets traded? Also, do you guys think Miami grabs a receiver in the draft? I mean, anything's likely if the right deal comes across. And it's kind of the same with the draft too. If the right player falls in your lap at the right position, you're going to make a move. Now, do I think they're going to take Tet McMillan or Matthew Golden or Ibuka or Luther Burden in the first? No, I don't. I don't even think they would take, I don't even know if they'd take a Trey Harris or a Jaden Higgins or a Jalen Noel at 69. I mean, they just added Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. They like what they got in Malik Washington. They don't know what they have in Tajay Washington yet, but like I think the guys we all like the Jack Beshes, I think these guys are going to be, again, we're talking about they're going to be going in that area between 48 and 98 where we don't have any picks, so I think this could be something where, you might get, if the right guy in the 4th round falls in your lap. Like I know there's a lot of Pat Bryant fans out there. A guy like Ricky White, if he falls, there, maybe. Yeah, I know. I'm gonna assume Neal's a fan of Ty Felton out of Maryland, but
love him.
Yeah,
I think he's one of the biggest sleepers in this draft.
Torrey Holton. I want nothing to do with Tez Johnson, but I think it's going to be one of those guys where it's like after the 4th round, once the 4th round starts, and really after the 5th round, anything is on the table. But I don't think we're gonna A, have the capital, or B, spend the capital if you want an Xavier Restrepo. I want Savion Williams or Jack Bash or Jaden Higgins. They're going to be gone. They're just not going to spend the capital, and they don't have the capital. I think a lot of the top receivers, like I could see 12, 15 receivers going before 100. And, I could see a big chunk of that going between, pick 33 to 100. So if anything, I think they would take a later guy. I don't know what you think, Neal.
Yeah, like you said it perfectly, man. Like when the right opportunities present itself, a team will do what it has to do. Like they won't now. It wouldn't surprise me at all if they took a receiver in the 5th round or running back in the 5th round. And whether I don't think Tyreek's going to get traded before this season, barring anything unforeseen, but I do think that this is going to be his last year in Miami. And I think that's the case for a lot of players. I think that's the case probably for Chubb, and if Armstead does come back, and I think that could even be the case for a guy like Jalen Ramsey, if I'm being honest. So I think they are going to give it the best try they can to bring everyone back on the roster currently. There's a couple players I think they still would like to sign, and I think they're going to try to make another run at it. But, I think Tyreek's on that open-day roster, and barring the health of our quarterback, I think we're going to see a Tyreek that's in the 12 to 1,300 range in receiving yards, more so than the guy that we saw last year, because I still think he's a great football player. We just need to make sure that the quarterback is healthy and we don't have to get Zach Wilson out there on the field. But there's going to be some receivers there that definitely will intrigue the Dolphins. And I don't think, I think there's guys that could be there at pick even 98, where if Jalen Noel from Iowa State's there, I think he's a guy that the Dolphins would have a lot of intrigue surrounding, to be honest. And then in round 4, like you said, Pat Bryant, that's a guy that I like a lot. Torrey Horton from Colorado State, like you mentioned, is another guy that I like a lot. Ty Felton from Maryland. So, long story short, I do think there will be some intriguing wide receiver options. And if you are trading Tyreek Hill after this season, or if you're releasing him or whatever that looks like, and look, he's our best football player still. I'm not going to change anything because he's an idiot off the field, but like, you got to start planning for the future and get some other guys in here. And I think it opens them up to take it doesn't necessarily have to be a size guy. They can still go and take a speed guy.
I'm going to tell you this. We pick at 98. If Savion Williams is still on the board at 98, I'm very intrigued. You're adding you're adding a really good athlete with some size to that, Another guy, I would like, if I don't know if he'll still be around, but I know he's risen on a lot of people's boards, is Jalen Royals from Utah State.
Royals is a stud.
But I don't know if he'll be there at 98. This is why we need a pick this is why, bro, 48 to 98 is too far. That is a round and a half. That is 50 picks. That is a full round and a half. That is 32 teams and then 18. So that is like a literal full round and a half. A little bit more, actually, because a full round and a half would be what? 32 and 16, Neal? So that's you can't, bro. You need to find a way to add a pick there. I'm sorry. You need to find a way and add a pick in the 60s at minimum, Neal. 60s or 70s, you need to add another pick.
And that's why I would trade next year second if I had to do it. I would do it because
the comp with Holland.
You have to do it. You got to do it. You have to go make a move that's bold like that.
And you got what do we have? 12 picks now, I think it is, right? Because we got that extra comp pick in the 7th.
Right.
But we got 4 7th round picks. We got 4 UDFAs. That's what we got. How many Purdy's are you going to hit in the 7th round? You know what I mean?
100%. And look, you might get a running back that can stick on the roster or something, but the reality is be fluid on draft night. Don't be afraid to move up. Don't be afraid to package those. Even throwing a 7th rounder to move up 10 spots in the 5th round could be worthwhile for the right player.
Listen, I'm going to tell you, Neal, if Ted or Gene T are your best players on the board, and Will Johnson and Kenneth Grant, because I think Kenneth Grant's going to go higher than people think. A lot of people I talked to the combine, a lot of teams switch their boards from Grant to 1 and Graham down to 2. But anyways, if Will Johnson and Kenneth Grant are gone, I would seriously consider, and Will Campbell and Armand Membo are gone, I would seriously consider, hey, can I move back to 18 or 19 and add a pick in that range?
I think you almost have to, because here's what I think. There are going to be 4 or 5 players that the Dolphins have ranked similar that are there and that are their BPAs that Phil needs. So it's kind of a luxury for them, right? And think of teams like the Broncos, the Chargers potentially, who need a tight end, because I think once the first one goes, I think the teams are going to panic that the second's going to go. So if Warren does go right before the Dolphins, teams are going to try to move up for Colston Loveland, and we're in position where a lot of people think the Colts are players in the tight end market. Well, we picked one spot before them. Yeah. So, if you have to move back to pick 20, let's say, you move back 7 spots and pick up pick 55 from Denver to do so, and you still get Malachi Starks, bravo.
That's a win. Yeah.
Yep.
That's
bravo.
a win. And Will Johnson may even fall a little bit more because of that pro day, bro. Because of the lack of the pro day. The word on the street is that he is falling, and I think Travis Hunter and Jahdae Barron are potentially probably going to go in front of him now.
Well, and in a scenario like that, when that happens, because the risk that you take on in those scenarios, and look, Chop turned out to be a really good rookie last year, but I think the Dolphins wanted Jared Verse and Troy Fautanu over Chop, and they went right before him.
Yeah.
the beauty
was
of,
the move. That's what they wanted. Yeah.
well, the beauty of it is I think that if you did that in the worst case scenario, right? Like you could get like a Tyler Booker at left guard, who's the best left guard in this class, at 20 and still pick up that pick 55. Like
That's
I
true.
just don't think there's a lot of way, because we can name 20 players right now that we think will go, but then you're still probably looking at Nick Eamon still there.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
I know we jump on the rise of players, but the reality is, if you pick at 20, only 19 players can go above. 25 players can't go above 20.
And we're hoping at least 3 of those are quarterbacks.
Well, that, and then that's where it's like, let Matt Golden jump in the top 15.
Yeah,
let
that's
Jahad Campbell jump in the top
I'm sorry.
15.
I'm not Matt Golden. I'm sorry, bro. I don't see it, bro. I like, you talk about overhype from the combine, bro. Holy,
he does not look 4.29 on tape.
No, not at all. Timothy says, what are your thoughts on Thor Griffith from Louisville in the later rounds? He's talking about the nose tackle who could flex out to the 3 tech. I like him, man. I actually think he's a sleeper. I think he's one of those guys that's going to come in. He's going to offer you special team snaps, and I think he can be part of a rotation. And I think he's one of those guys where, as the years go by, his role will get bigger and bigger and bigger. I actually like him as a if he's there on day 3, I mean, I'm in.
Yeah, I think he transferred from either Stanford or Harvard. I don't remember which one. And he kind of reminds me of like the lunch pail type of guy, like Buffalo had, if you remember back in the day, their old captain, Kyle Williams. Like, he reminds me of a guy like that, like a guy that just, he plays the game extremely hard. What he doesn't have in natural athletic ability, he makes up for with his temperament and, his motor. And I do think he's an interesting name as a late round pick. And I think there's a chance that if they have 11 picks, Miami could take 3, and it wouldn't even rock my world if they took 4, if you count a pass rusher on the defensive front. Like, I could see them going heavy in this draft on that defensive front. So there's a lot of names. Like, defensive line is so deep in this year's draft class that, like, it's one of the few positions here where you're probably getting round 3 talent in round 4. So like there's going to be names like, and if they did a lot of work at Georgia, like a guy like Nazir Stackhouse in round 5.
Yeah.
Like, as a true zero tech.
Neal, these guys don't even make our top 15 because this class is so freaking stacked, bro.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
And I'll say this: I think the most underrated defensive lineman in the whole group is C.J. West. I think he's a ball. I think he's a ball player, man.
Yeah. He would actually. I was deciding between him and Shamar Turner for 15. He's a stud, man. It's just such a deep class, bro. It's just ridiculous how deep this class is. Like, it's nuts. And then I'll let Neal handle this one because we were talking about this. Hey, you can even tell them you DM the guy. OverTheCap just listed Miami with the least cap space in the NFL at negative 10.3 million. Where the F are the restructures already? Neal, let the finisher know what the deal is.
Yeah, Jason at OverTheCap. Look, they run a good website, but he's a Jets fan, and I don't know if he necessarily always has accurate information on the Dolphins. Like, I would go with Spot Track as the center for the Miami Dolphins. And I think OverTheCap's a great resource when you want to look at restructure amounts, post-June cut amounts. Like, they do a good job of kind of getting a data center for all the the contracts that are out there. But it's a fluid situation. But there are going to have to be a couple of restructures because they still need about $10 to $11 million to sign their draft class. So there are going to be restructures. Here's what they've been doing. The cap space they had, that was in their checking account, they're spending that. And whatever the overage is, they're going to have to whip out their credit card, restructure contracts, and pay for it. That's what they're going to have to do. They have the ability to restructure and create over $40 million in cap space. I think slow and steady wins the race because I don't think the Dolphins are done by any means. I actually think they're waiting for a big domino to get a decision. I think that decision's coming either tomorrow or Saturday, and they'll know where they stand on a certain player. And if that player decides to retire or go elsewhere, they'll probably have a couple players in mind that they'd like to sign. But there's no doubt, and everyone knows this, priority number one for them right now is to try to get Calais Campbell back here.
I agree. Maybe, just maybe, Neal, you wouldn't believe it, but guess what? That domino may have just fallen for the Miami Dolphins, Neal.
Oh,
And guess what?
It happened?
I told everyone they would do this, and sure enough, Miami Dolphins have re-signed Liam Eichenberg on a 1-year deal with the, per source, Liam Eichenberg is back in Miami. I told everyone they would bring him back. I warned every single person they would do this, and they freaking did it, Neal.
Oh my God, dude! This franchise. Can we just fast forward to 2026 at this point? Like, I mean, what an unserious franchise, man. I thought you were saying that we actually just got Calais Campbell, so I went from excitement to heartbreak. But yeah, these are the type of. Here's the thing, reason they're so predictably bad at so many things that we kind of said this is tongue in cheek all along. Like, we've been joking about it for so long, but in the back of my mind, I always feared this. I
knew they were going to do this, man.
And man, if this is fucking $4 million, sorry, we'll drop an F-bombs on the if this is $4 million or more, man, this is where, in a need to win year, if he's out there as the starting offensive lineman, I'm actually can't wait to watch these guys lose their jobs, because that is just malpractice after the tape that this guy's put out for years to bring him back. What a disgrace. What a disgrace of a move. Hey, you know what? At least now Zach Wilson's not the worst move of the offseason. Jesus Lord, man.
I mean, like, there's a couple things I want to say here. Number one, the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That's the first thing I'll say. Number two, what I'll say here, okay? Like, the fact that you will just not let it go, the fact that you will just not admit that you whiffed on trading up and you whiffed on the pick itself, it says all I need to know about these guys.
And I don't think they're getting him as a starter. Reason I don't, because he played right guard, and I think that's where James Daniels plays, and I think it's more of a depth piece. But when you've got a guy coming off of a bad Achilles, and it's Liam Eichenberg that you're going back to, man, it better be like $1.4 million or something that's just a joke. But yeah, it's the bad dream that won't end. That's one way to kick the sales out of a show.
Like, unbelievable. Like, anyways, so we've been talking about cornerback. We've been talking about defensive tackle a lot on this show, Neal. And just lastly here, something I want to get to. I want to show you this. So Omar Kelly on Twitter, he was actually asked this question. What's the plan at cornerback? Still a few out there in free agency, but slim pickings. Feel like if Will Johnson slips, they could draft him. He said either someone old or the draft. And this is why I'm showing this. It's not Cam Smith, I'm told. And then
Davius White, right?
Yeah. And then, I mean, we keep talking about, defensive tackle. I'm just doubling up here for you to give your thoughts. I'm shocked. They let Deshaun Hand walk, who's quietly really good for them, Neal, and he didn't get much money. I mean, they weren't willing to pay $3.35 million to Deshaun Hand, who showed he was a great rotational piece for them last year. I mean, this continues to look like defensive tackle, and corner are just they look at this draft, and I don't think they see them as super pressing to spend stupid money on, Neal.
Yeah, man. It's interesting. I think they will bring back Benito Jones. So I think that's one defensive lineman we can see back here. But Deshaun Hand has given the Dolphins really good years of service for very little pay for multiple years in a row. And eventually, man, the team's either going to reward you or let you go. And, it's clear the Dolphins are going to let him go, obviously, which to me just doesn't make a lot of sense because for that kind of money, Deshaun Hand would have outplayed that last year for us, right? I don't know. He'll go to a guy like Jim Harbaugh, and Jim Harbaugh will get the next level out of him. He's a tough, hard-nosed guy that fits on their defensive front quite well, to be honest. So, I don't know. Just it seems like they are. It's like sometimes it seems like they intentionally make moves aimed at like just messing with their fan base. Letting people that we like go for cheap, signing people that we can't stand to come back. Like sometimes it's just like puzzling. And I mean, where is accountability in this organization from doing your job and doing your job well? You know what I mean? Like, how do people get rewarded for being an absolute disaster? Like some of it just doesn't make sense, man. And there's one thing that's clear about the Dolphins is when it comes to the offensive line, they just don't figure it out. And James Daniels is a good player. Aaron Brewer's a good player. I kind of hope Teron Armstead comes back at this point. I'll be honest. Who knows?
Well, and the thought is, just from what Barry Jackson tweeted out after the signing, it's a one-year deal, but they've told him he's going to compete with whoever they bring in at guard.
So do you think they were going to put James Daniels on the left side?
No, I think they're going to – Liam Eichenberg's going to compete at left guard.
Dude, I'll say this right now.
And then if he loses, he's going to be the backup swing guard.
Yeah, I knew it.
/ center.
Oh, my. Miami has the Dolphins, the world's greatest football team, they say.
I don't like – he's been so bad and made you as a coaching staff and you as a GM look bad. You had your chance to – hey, we gave him the full term of his rookie deal. Didn't work out. Wipe my hands. But, man, I mean, like, you got – if James Daniels misses time because of an Achilles injury and this guy has to fill in for him.
Yeah.
Like, that's going to get you fired, bro.
Well, and I don't want to jump to drastic conclusions, but I'll tell you, man, like, my expectations for this season seem to dwindle a little bit more every day. And we haven't even had the draft yet, so that's where I got to keep my focus on. This team still has a lot of opportunities to get better. But what really concerns me is maybe they, after all this draft stuff we talked about, maybe they just don't view offensive guard as that big of a need anymore. They think they check that box with James Daniels, yeah. And now they have Liam back.
I don't know. I'm not a fan of this move by any stretch.
Me and you were sitting here live like we just watched a car crash. Like,
yeah, look at the energy and the vibe, and then they go and do this.
Well, just when I didn't think they could shock me even more, even though, again, in the back of my mind, I always thought this is a possibility. Like, here it is. And just think about this. We're on what? It's Thursday. Free agency really started Sunday, right? Not one team sniffed, had a visit, talked to Liam Eichenberg, yet here we are running back to the altar to get him again.
Bro, we got a guy who plays offensive line in the NFL and yet somehow lays on his stomach and his back more than a woman in Vegas turning tricks. You figure this one out, bro. And then they decide, let's bring him back for a 1-year deal.
100%, dude. Oh, man. Like, what a kick in the below the belt here at the end of the show. Ladies and gentlemen, you're getting a raw, live, real reaction to one of the most pathetic signings I've seen the Dolphins make and that I can ever remember.
Any final thoughts, bro?
Yeah, man, at least the draft's around the corner. I mean, we're inching closer and closer. I mean, we're getting to that 1 month mark, which is great. It is still my favorite time of the year. The Dolphins definitely have a lot of opportunities in the draft to make themselves better. Um, I still think the big domino is to see what happens with Calais Campbell. I think it's us. I think it's Baltimore. I still think retirement's an option, but I have a feeling he's going to come back for one more season. I hope it's us. I know the Dolphins are trying. I don't know if they're in the lead or not. But I don't think it's going to be a sweetheart type of deal like we got from him last year. If he is back, I'd say he's probably going to get a $8 million around range a year type of contract. And I know that Miami wants him back bad. So I think we're going to hear something here in the next 24, 48 hours on Calais Campbell.
All right, guys and gals, I will be back soon. I'll be back sometime. I might be back twice in the next 3 days. I don't know, but I will be back. I got some shows lined up next week. I want to drop my first big board. I will also be dropping a show explaining why I think they're moving the way they're moving at DT, cornerback, and everything. So make sure you tune in for all that. Smash the like button. Subscribe if you are new. I just added the PayPal for all of you people who loved donating through PayPal. It's back up at paypal.me/Phinside NFL. So smash the like button. Subscribe if you're new. Let's get to 20K. And I will see you on the next one. Until then, you don't know what time it is. Fins up all day, every day.